Satisfactory is a game I picked up a couple weeks ago, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. It takes place on an alien planet where your goal is to build and automate resource collection through factory-like assembly lines, hence Satisfactory. It's extremely fun planning out new builds, discovering new resources, and exploring the vast world. And I don't use vast lightly. This map is huge and full of breathtaking landscapes. But there's one thing that kept catching my eye. Or should I say ear. The music in Satisfactory complements the game very well. It mimics the freedom of having your own world to do what you please in, with an overarching theme of expansion and growth, with very colorful chords and blankets of sound being draped over most of the tracks, giving the soundtrack a very flexible and fluid feeling. The sounds are constantly shrinking and growing to an invisible tempo, which helps to add variation in ambient style tracks, but also just vibes. Aside from the stunning sonics, this shrinking and growing is actually what first got my attention, even though a version of it is found in virtually every song ever written. For example, if we connect a story to this track, we can hear that our hero is trudging along to his destination. His confidence is growing and nothing can get in the way. Except a bridge section. This section tests our hero. Things are changing, he might be scared or unsure, or maybe even his inspiration is growing and he's getting more amped up. But before you know it, he's pulled himself out of this rut for a final hurrah. The music in Satisfactory doesn't exactly have this quality to me. I know that they're completely different genres, but I think my point still stands. If I draw an energy timeline to my track, it might look something like this. With most of the tracks in the game, however, it feels something closer to this. Instead of sudden changes of music and emotion, it's a smooth glide up to the peak and a smooth slide down. So, which one tells more of a story? Well, mine does, simply. But not to an objective advantage. See, in a game like Satisfactory, you don't want the music telling an elaborate story. You want it to be a backing track to guide your own story. After all, it is an open world, choose your own adventure style game. It wouldn't make sense to have strict linear music to a game that is anything but. ARPs are interesting. They're melodic and by definition they are melodies, but in context they often work as support for the chords. In the case of Satisfactory, I feel like the ARPs accentuate the lack of a main, powerful melody. Now, I don't want to make it seem like there's no melodies in the soundtrack. There's tons of them, but there also happens to be a lot of droning and empty space, which is kind of more what I'm talking about. When I hear an ARP, my brain isn't always thinking about the sequence of the notes, but often the notes themselves. This dictates the mood and feeling that our melody will have, the same way that different scales and different keys have different feelings. It's saying, these notes are an important part of the feeling we're going for, regardless of sequence. Instead of giving you a melody with a strict order of notes and a strict rhythm, they're kind of just giving you a handful of notes and saying, here's the vibe, you got it from here. When I'm listening to these ARPs, I can easily riff off matching melodies in my head to give the ARPs more intention and shift its direction. And to me, that's exactly the purpose they serve in the game. A collection of notes to guide you into a direction, but not necessarily take you to a determined destination. That's for you to decide. If the game is chords, then the player is the melody. There's probably one thing you're wondering. Who actually made the music? Well, that would be one Jannik Reuterberg, a composer and sound designer based in Sweden. I thought it would be really cool if I could ask him some questions about his process and decision making in Satisfactory, so I sent him a message. And to my surprise, he actually answered, so I'm just gonna go through the questions and read his answers. My first question was, were there any specific moments or scenes or playstyle in the game that influenced your composition choices? If so, how? To which he answered, yeah, sort of. The obvious ones are the tracks belonging to certain areas which had to match the visuals. I tried making some connection to our world. In the rocky desert, I use a guitar reminiscent of Western movie music. As for playstyle, I wanted the music to be more chill while exploring, and just slightly more upbeat when you're in the factory. Question number 2, were there any particular musical influences that shaped the direction of the soundtrack? To which he said, yes, 2. Thomas Dvorak, aka Floex, has been a huge influence for me, not so much for the sound in this case, but for his playfulness and his uniqueness. It was always more important to me to have a sound that stood out, which you could easily identify as Satisfactory immediately, rather than something overly polished and common. Second influence is Hello Meteor. I'm an avid fan of his, and his blend of cinematic sounds and synthwave definitely helped shape the sound. So the two artist names, I'm not going to play any of their music here, but I highly recommend you go and check some of it out, because it's really cool. Thomas Dvorak has a lot of interesting sounds that I can't even guess what some of them would come from. Third question is, do you have a favorite piece from the soundtrack? What makes it stand out to you? To which he said, this is a tough one. Pygmalion Effect holds a special place as it was the first one where I felt that this is it. This is the essence of Satisfactory. And I still feel that way. Then there's also Post Tenebras and Ultraviolet from the Ambient soundtrack. I'm probably pronouncing Tenebras wrong, I can feel it. Both of these stand out in similar ways. They're very simple but still manage to portray quite complex feelings if you allow them to. At least to me. And they are the only two tracks that I actively listen to, which is rare as I usually detest listening to my own stuff. Now I wanted to bring something up about Pygmalion Effect that I think is really cool. The Pygmalion Effect, it doesn't really matter what the effect is. Pygmalion was a Greek sculptor who fell so much in love with his work that his sculptures came to life. And I think by naming the song Pygmalion Effect is just a great way to say when he got this track done, it brought the game to life. In his own words, he felt like the track is perfect for the game. It's the sound of the game. And both of Post Tenebras and Ultraviolet are very ambient tracks, super ambient. I also want to touch on him saying that these ambient tracks can portray a lot of emotion and complex feelings if you allow them to. And I could not agree more. It's kind of mind-blowing the emotions that can be provoked through ambient music, just as much as any other type of music, if not more. It's really something crazy of how these textures and sounds can provoke emotions, even without an emotional melody or something. Very cool stuff. And my last question was a somewhat personal question, but I asked him, are there any skills or experiences you found particularly valuable in your journey as a game composer? To which he answered, absolutely. Being able to cooperate and make friends with the people I work with has been crucial. I am by far not the greatest composer and have often struggled with imposter syndrome, but over the years I've come to learn that just being someone enjoyable to work with usually will get you a lot further than just your skill in your craft. But the thing I've come to value most is my ability to work with atmosphere and feeling. I like to think that my strengths as a composer lie there, working with soundscapes rather than complex music theory, which is definitely not my strong suit. One of my goals for this channel is to make music and music making as accessible as possible. And it's people in the industry like Jannik who are willing to talk to me that really make that possible. So thank you for that. I also want to say that in the small exchange of messages that we had, he was extremely kind. I think I'm ready to attempt my track. It's time. Alright, now before I show off my song, let me preface by saying I completely missed the mark. I'm not gonna lie. I had some confidence going in, but I'm just simply not used to this style of music. My normal genre is orchestral. I don't work within soundscapes and electronic music. I got some of the elements, but it's not there. So I'm gonna run through some of the patterns and then I'll play it for you. So the first thing I added was this bass line. Super simple, meat and potatoes. But what I found really interesting was the actual sound. It sounds like it's expanding and I liked that, so. Next thing I added was just this sequence. It is literally just a rhythmic thing, kind of syncopated to the bass. Add some interest. Chords. I have this synth pluck here, and then I have this pad underneath it to make this. And then I also have these brighter stab versions of the chords to kind of just add more stab to it. Another element is this arp, and this is very satisfactory to me. I also have this super fast arp that I made on my Roland S1 right here. So that's what you're hearing with this. Just a cascading arp going up and down pretty much. I plan to do a whole video about this because, yeah, this little ARP thing does not show its true capability. Next, I made this drone, and this was made by putting a piano through a granulizer. I have it come up here, and it makes a really nice sound. Next is this ARP melody thing. This is probably the least Satisfactory-like thing, but I have this kick that comes in. What it all really comes down to is just feeling right, and it felt right to put those kicks in, so I did that. And the very last thing is this synth lead solo thing. And that's pretty much it for all the individual parts of it. The way that Jannik said music theory stuff is not his strong suit is exactly how I feel about this stuff. I think it just sounds meh. I think it sounds mediocre. Now, if you made it this far into the video, you probably somewhat enjoyed it, so consider liking. Next video, I'm thinking of doing music from Sea of Thieves, which has been my favorite game for quite some time now, and I love the music in that game. So stay tuned for that, if you're at all interested. Now, let us listen.